Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bernard Wolfsdorf, immigration attorney. I am delighted to welcome you all to the EB-5 immigration webinar, setting up and operating regional centers. I have also got an added feature which we have just added to our program. That is the wonderful question of Chinese retrogression. That hello was from none other than Jor Law. Yes, Jor, we've got you online, and you're going to be one of our first speakers. Mr. Jor Law, Mr. Columbia University law graduate. This guy is smarter than he even looks. Homeier Law, one of the handful of top corporate and securities lawyers. Those of you who have joined many of our past webinars know that I have drunk far too much coffee. That is all I will claim guilty to have drunk prior to this. I've had 2 large cups of coffee, and we've got a lot of noise there. Jor, is that you scratching your head? A little sidetrack, somebody is scratching their ear. We have 3 guest speakers, 2 of our resident speakers, Mr. Jor Law, corporate and securities attorney par excellence with Homeier Law. His partner Mike Homeier, also a major player in this arena, and Mr. Kevin Wright, principal of Wright Johnson LLC. Kevin, I have a little question for you. It is rumored in the EB-5 business that you in fact got an approval based on one of your business plans for a regional center in 77 days. I repeat, 77 days for the entire state of Michigan. I ask you to plead. Do you plead guilty or innocent to the charge that you got a regional center approved for the state of Michigan in 77 days? The answer would be a yes or no, Mr. Kevin Wright.
That would be a yes.
Guilty as charged. Well done. I think that is a record. Please pardon my stupidity. I have some fun in life. I have 4 lovely children. They give me great joy. And I have a Chinese wife who beats me up on a regular basis, so I'm a happy little camper. And in addition to Mr. Kevin Wright, principal of Wright Johnson, we have Mr. George Ekins. George joins us for the first time. George has acquired somewhat celebrity status in the regional center business. He set up American Dream Fund, and he just completed the, what can we call it? I would call it the poster project, the SLS project in Vegas, $375 million capital raise. I repeat, $375 million capital raise. I did have the privilege of filing a bunch of those cases. They're all getting approved in about 8 or 9 months from time of filing. George, congratulations. That was an amazing job that you guys did. I know it sounds easy. I saw you sweat. I saw you get beaten up. I actually tried to beat you up once myself, but you blocked it from the left and the right. And George is not a man that you want to get into an argument with, by the way. You should have seen, I was going to put a picture of him that I found on the internet that kind of looked like a frog, but he got angry with me, so we now have the touched-up picture of George Ekins. George, SLS has really been your defining project, and you're going to answer questions for us on running a regional center. So, you know, describe for me in a sentence, what was that experience of putting together that project? I know you spent so much time in China away from your family, but what is your one thought that comes from handling that amazing SLS project? I guess they're opening this summer the old Sahara Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. Tell me, what are your feelings about that, George?
Well, let me just start off with Bernie. It's a great pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and it's always fun to kind of share the trials and tribulations of EB-5 with my fellow colleagues and people that are interested in joining this wonderful arena and industry. The SLS, as you pointed out, was a defining moment for us. It's by far one of the largest EB-5 raises in the history of EB-5. I don't know if there's just one word that can summarize everything that the year and a half took out of our lives, but I would say that the success is not one person. that you have to really build a really good team around a project to ensure that you're going to be able to get the traction that's needed and that it's going to be met with the credibility from all sides, whether it's on the state side or over in Asia or globally. And we owe the success of this project to great immigration attorneys such as yourself that had a significant involvement in it. And I also like to compliment Jor and his partner Michael for having their significant role in the project as well.
And Kevin doesn't have his finger in the pie at all. He has nothing to do with it. No credit for Kevin. Is that the story?
Well, as I said, it takes a great team, and I think that everybody, I'm sure there's even more people on the call that had their involvement in it, and Kevin was a strategic player in the project as well.
Yo, we're giving credit today wherever credit is due and beyond, but truly it is about teamwork, and having your team is a critical way to move forward. George, most of us were, I know Kevin was there and you were there at the IIUSA conference in Washington, D.C., and oh my gosh, hats off to Peter Joseph and his team. If you want to be in this field, IIUSA is the organization to join. I learned so much. All the government speakers were there. I personally had the opportunity to do the China retrogression panel with Charlie Oppenheim. Wow, I tell you, that was really something amazing. By the way, I have like 75 slides here, but so much to say. You know, two real big takeaways. He mentioned to me there's 9,200 petitions in the system, 9,200, 526 petitions in the system. And Charlie mentioned to me as well that they anticipate and they calculate that 85%, I repeat, 85% of the program are Chinese investors, both for this year and next year. So, you know, I know that, Kevin, you just came back from Brazil, and I know Brazil's starting to take off. Brazil hasn't even appeared on the count with regard to numbers, but we're seeing a surge coming from Brazil and other countries. So, you know, I don't know if this will keep going with the 85% Chinese demand, but at the end of this, I'll make you folks unfortunately have to stay on to the end. I'm going to talk about Chinese retrogression. I'm going to talk about the waiting line. We got real good hard data. D-A-T-A. Bernie, how about a silly joke? What did the baby computer call its father? Data. Come on, Bernie, this is not about jokes. This is about EB-5, but I just saw that in the crazy movie Her, which was quite a funny little joke. Okay, so George, let's go back to our facts. At the IIUSA conference, I was sitting next to what I think was an attorney, and he said he would have some questions for me under the caption of leasing a regional center. Some people should call it affiliating with a regional center. Some people call it leasing a regional center. Some people call it rent-a-center, which we're not supposed to use. But I asked this person from IIUSA to send me a few questions, and Bob, I hope you're on the call because we're going to answer those questions to you. So I'm going to read these questions. Sorry to be a little bit boring. I'll try and throw in some bad jokes to make up for it. Please do not need to laugh. By the way, we will be answering all your questions, but some folks, such as Jor, may have to go. Jor is actually a very good son and is with his mom, who's having a procedure done. So, pardon, no secrets. Once you're on this panel, we share everything, and Jor is got to run in a little bit of a rough situation. So, asking about leasing out a regional center. So here's the first question to you, Mr. George Ekins. What are the essential terms to be included in the agreement? And I'll ask the second question as well. How do the parties determine the amount to be paid for the lease? So, George, are you ready to take those two questions? What are the essential terms when a project wants to affiliate with, would be the correct word I would use, doing an MOU, doing a contract? What are the essential terms that you include? So I've got a great project. I'm going to build a new hotel, and I want to open this up. And what are the essential terms that I need to deal with, and how much is it going to cost me? And I know you're not going to give me an exact answer on that, but George, take away those two questions in terms of operating a regional center. What are the two things that you would be telling this young gentleman?
I think to start off, you have two different sides. You have the regional center that is going to be doing the lease, and then you have the developer or the marketer or the people that are interested in actually using the regional center for their EB-5 purposes. I can tell you from kind of our perspective, and we've been on both sides of this fence, is that from the regional center side, there's a substantial amount of liability that you need to be concerned with, and that will somewhat go into the pricing that you asked about. And you need to look at, from the regional center side, what your liability is and what your requirements are going to be for processing those investors and ensuring that the investors are going to have kind of the safe harbor, the safe landing in a particular project. And that you need to monitor the process and the progress of a particular project that is actually going to start construction, that it's going to have timely filings of the I-526s and then also the 829s, which is the ultimate goal. But you need to make sure that the project is actually going to start construction, it's going to spend the money that it's saying it's going to be spending, and that it's going to actually get a C of O or a certificate of occupancy at the end, and that it's going to be operational. And if you're the one that's leasing this regional center, if there's hiccups along the way, which anytime you're doing business, there's always hiccups, you need to make sure that the team that is controlling that project is going to be successful. Otherwise, the liability could come down to you. And if there is a possibility that if the project's not successful, that this could then have a negative repercussions on your ability to continue to use that regional center from USCIS's perspective, pay for them to come and revoke your regional center, but also from a marketing perspective, that if a project that you are now sponsoring is not successful, that will definitely hinder your ability to future market projects. From a project side, though, what you're looking for is you want to, depending on your sophistication, you want to make sure that the regional center that is sponsoring it, that you are in alignment with them as far as who's going to be responsible for the different filing requirements and the different liabilities. The project side, at least from our perspective, that we have all of these systems built in place in our company to be able to handle investors all the way through the whole process, which we've gone through. So we advocate and demand that we're going to be in control of the whole process, and that it's, when we utilize somebody else's regional center, it's generally much more on kind of the, use your term here, the rent-a-center circumstances, where we're just paying a fee to be able to utilize that license. Now, fees can range depending on the amount of work that's going to be required on both sides. And they can be from a per investor amount to a fee of what how much capital is actually coming into through the regional center.
Yeah, Bernie.
Yeah, please proceed.
Bernie, this is Jor. I can also add on if George is done.
Yeah, please do. One of the questions that we have here, Jor, was how does the lessor ensure the investing process complies with both USCIS and SEC regs? I would particularly like you to take the second part of that question, Jor.
Yeah, I'll touch briefly on the first one as well. In the regional center leasing space, it's still a relatively young market. So I think a lot of folks are still learning. American Dream Fund was one of the early successful regional centers, and on top of that, not only that, but there are a bunch of jerks in EB-5 and American Dream Fund.
Whoa! Did I just hear that?
Have a bunch of nice folks there. So they, we worked with them extensively on kind of language, for folks that were leasing their regional center, or for them working with other people, and since then we've adapted, many times the variation. I think the key thing there is, depending on which side you are, you definitely have different interests. This is one of those letter of intents where there's one thing that everyone wants done right, which is the offering to be successful and to be free from liability. Then everything else typically the developer and or the regional center will have a little bit of conflict between the two of them. So it's important to kind of get a team that is well experienced with these to help work with them. In terms of shifting the liability and how does someone ensure that a project is compliant, unfortunately, no matter what, the primary responsibility usually falls on the issuer. And so the company or whoever is raising the money, if the RC is raising the money for it. And the only way to really comply there is to work with, kind of professional advisors. I hate to toot my own horn, but essentially you do have to work with professional advisors that know how to navigate the securities laws. Beyond that, there's not that much you can do. You can go through contracts and say that if this has gone wrong, you will indemnify me and things like that. And then you can work with, tell them that they must work with a team that you've approved. Or in a worst case scenario, if you had that much at stake, you could hire your own team to read and review and verify the company's offering as if you were making the offering, and then combined with comments for that. That tends to slow down the process. It tends to create higher legal bills for everyone involved, but that is the safest option. Bernie, briefly, just because everyone always cares about pricing, and because we see the pricing not only on kind of like American Dream Fund type deals, but other deals, it really varies. We've seen deals as low as $25,000 where someone rents the entire regional center for the entire project, and it only cost them $25,000. The regional center was basically, had no deals, needed some money, and it was just a kind of a perfect fit. And the regional center didn't do anything. And we've seen deals where the regional center fees are in the millions of dollars. We had two kids, for example, that had a regional center. They just graduated from school, and somehow they had a regional center because their family had them get one. And some big developer came and gave them a few $1 million just to use it, and they didn't have to do anything. But sometimes it's really negotiable. It depends on the geographic location, the track record of a regional center, whether their name lends you credibility or not, things like that.
Jor, thank you. That is very, very helpful. And, I got this question yesterday. I want to make sure I answered it. Somebody asked me, are any of these insurable risks? And I'm like, well, you can't really insure this. So just contradict me if there's insurance available for this kind of risk. I don't believe there is. Question number one. The other thing that I want to flip over and go back to you, George, is, George, you just finished this, what I call mega project with several $100 million raise, and I understand your two latest projects are smaller projects. One is an assisted living in Georgia, and the other one is a small Hyatt hotel also in Georgia. Can you tell me, what are the advantages of going for smaller projects, and a smaller project, what is $25–30 million raise as opposed to $100 million? What is the why the smaller project at this point? What are the pros of the smaller projects? And can you? I know you can't market your projects, but just explain to me why you think these projects are positive and why you took them on, George.
Sure, happy to. I think that there's a market space for almost any type of project. Number one is, and especially as you go out and you market globally. Smaller projects come with some significant benefits, though, in that there's more predictability that you're going to be able to raise the number of investors. If you're dealing with a large project, a couple hundred investors, it takes time to go through that process of raising it. And really, the challenge is building up the marketing engine that's going to be able to take you all the way through it. And if you're looking at it from an investor's perspective, of which, if you're going to be doing any type of project you really need to look at, is how do you convince an investor that if you have an offering that needs 300 investors or more, that first investor should put their toe in the water and jump in first? How do they know that that project is going to be successful? And how do they know that you have the ability, or your regional center has the ability, to raise the balance of funds, and that the project's not going to just go bust because it can't raise the fund? And that's one of the biggest challenges with any type of project. Now that challenge gets reduced as the smaller the project, and that's an investor seeing that you only need to raise 10 million or 20, 30, 40 investors. It's much easier for them to understand that, and you're able to deal with those type of questions and showing an investor, the investor groups that you're talking to, that like there's 4,000 investors every year for EB-5. We're only trying to raise 30, 40 investors. That you'll be able to accomplish that, and especially if you have a track record, it makes it a lot easier. The other benefits with smaller projects is that you can generally control things a little bit more. The developers are a little bit easier to work with, in my experience at least, that you're able to dictate more of the terms and build in the safeguards in those projects.
Got it.
Right.
George?
One other benefit of small deals that I've always liked, I think there's a space for big deals, and those are fantastic. One other benefit that I like about small deals is that if a big deal goes south for whatever reason, right? In the real world, some deals go south. And when deals go south, there's really two principal risks in EB-5, right? One is you lose your investment capital, and that's bad, but that's not as bad as the other risk, which is you lose your green card. So in a big deal, if something has gone wrong, the money needed to save that deal might be a large number. Whether someone can pull it off, who knows? But in a small deal that only has a few investors, sometimes it's easy to just get the syndicate of investors to agree to say, look, things didn't go according to plan. There was a big market crash and the recession hit. We're going to need 3 more years to make this work. Do you mind putting in a little bit more money to ensure that we responsibly hired all 10 people that you need to do? Because they might just be 1 or 2 people away. In a small deal, sometimes it's easier to work out when crisis mode hits than a larger deal. So that's something I've personally kind of seen in some of the smaller deals that seem attractive.
So the bottom line is, a smaller ship, easier to turn, big ship, hard to turn, hit the iceberg, and bingo, you're down. Okay, we do have a bunch of slides. I'm going to jump into these slides. I just wanted to answer these questions as an intro. George or Jor may jump at some point. We will be opening this up to questions. Sorry, I've been taking so much time. You get to look at that lovely picture of George. My picture, by the way, is a fake. I'm much older than that. My beard's gone gray, but I think in the world of the internet, you're allowed to use slightly old pictures. So there we are. Just wanted to make that little disclaimer. Otherwise, everything else is factually accurate to the best of my knowledge and belief. Lawyer talk, blah, blah, blah. Let's kick away. Wolfsdorf, blah, 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 walks on water, flies without wings, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe any of that stuff you read on the screen. Homeier Law, there he is. Mr. Jor Law, there's his contact information, corporate security, business transactions, and the master of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding between the project and the regional center. Jor, the truth is I didn't know you do that work. Now I do. Okay, let's see what Jor's going to say in his next slides. Let's flip over. Slide number 1. Hello, Mr. Tech. Man, my thing is frozen. I don't know what you did, but... Frozen. We don't want to keep looking. Disclaimer. 1, 2, disclaimer. I am not liable for anything heretofore said. Broker-dealer. Okay, so Jor, you got this off the SEC website. I don't want to read it. What does this thing say?
Yeah, let me just jump in real quickly. The slides Bernie usually makes available after the call, so I'm not going to follow them religiously in time today.
Boring.
There were new developments kind of coming out of Washington last week at a USA conference. So I want to make sure I hit some of those notes in addition to the areas of the advanced topics I have in my slide. So let's start off with the first few slides. The broker-dealer is something that is important. Essentially, a broker is what you think a broker is. It's similar to a real estate broker where someone needs a license in order to be able to make a compensation affecting real estate transactions. In EB-5 space, a broker is important because if you're a person that makes money affecting a securities transaction, you're a broker. So in most cases, most EB-5 projects involve securities, passively owned interest in business enterprises that are conducted and managed by other people, right? So most of these EB-5 offerings involve securities. So the issue becomes, for a lot of immigration attorneys or other people that are helping to source investors, can they legally make a commission for referring investors? And the answer is yes, only if you are registered or if you find an exemption. And the next question that everyone always asks is, well, I'm not a broker. I'm just a finder. I've only found people for them. And that's fine. If you truly are a finder, then you're right. You don't need to register. It's completely legal for you to take the money. The big issue is that whether you're a broker or a finder is a very careful test, and most always you fall into the broker. So the first slide that Bernie hopefully has up on the screen is just a list of 4 questions that you can honestly ask yourself, and if they're found on the SEC website, and if you answer yes to any of them, even just one, then you're probably a broker, at least in the SEC's eyes. Now, why do we care about this, right? We care about this because the SEC has gone on, in 2012, they hinted that they were going to look at this. I know from friends at the SEC that they have been looking at it. And last week, they confirmed that they are looking at it as one of the top things that they're looking at. They want to make sure that people who are getting compensated for being brokers and people who are paying them are doing this properly and getting licensed and only dealing with licensed folks. That doesn't mean that every person that introduces investors to you has to be licensed. It doesn't mean that you are going to go to jail if you paid even one person. It just means that you have to have your attorney do a careful analysis with you to determine who you could pay and who you can't pay and what the risks of compliance are. So that's hot topic number 1 is, are you a broker-dealer? Are you paying a broker-dealer? And if so, the SEC is watching. The second thing that they brought up last week, and it's actually been an EB-5 industry. I didn't include it in the slides just because people get mad when I include too many, like warnings in slides. But since the SEC brought it up specifically, and it's something our firm cares about, I'll bring it up. Same thing. It's Investment Advisor Act. So, in one whereas for the broker laws, you needed to get registered and licensed to be able to broker deals. If you're providing investment advice, then there's a separate law that says, well, hold it. If you're going to provide investment advice, you either need to register or you need to find an exemption. And that's another kind of a hot topic now that the SEC is looking at. And essentially, if you're providing advice or guidance for anyone on how to buy securities, if you're managing the securities for them, then you're probably an investment advisor, and the analysis is, relatively that simple. So that's the second hot topic issue in EB-5. Now, the third one is something that I personally have an interest in. This is something dealing with the Jobs Act. Now, when most people do offerings, the law in the U.S. basically is if you're going to raise money by issuing securities, you have to register it. Now, that process is essentially the process of taking a company public. It's expensive. It takes a long time. It's not fun. So most people find an exemption so that they don't have to register those securities. In EB-5, the most commonly used exemptions are Reg D and Reg F. Outside of EB-5 in the U.S., by far the most common exemption by a wide mile, like $1 trillion worth of money is raised each year using Regulation D. Now, Regulation D essentially is a private placement exemption. It means that you don't have to register your stock, if it's not a public offering, and if you follow the steps laid out in Reg D, then you'll be assured that it's a private offering. And the private offering, of course, meant that you couldn't publicly solicit, you couldn't advertise, you couldn't let people know, essentially, that you were raising money unless you already had a pre-existing relationship with them. And they had to be accredited. So what happened late last year is the Jobs Act, which was signed a while ago, the part of the Jobs Act that allowed general solicitation went into effect late last year. So what happened is that means you could now legally do a Reg D, quote-unquote, private placement, but you could generally solicit and you could advertise. This changes the game entirely, because before you couldn't go out on your website and have a website that people could access without password protection. Before you couldn't go to trade conferences and have booths out there and market your offering. Before you couldn't take advertisements online in print or online media. Now you can do all of that. The big catch at the moment is that you have to verify that your investors are actually accredited investors. No longer can someone just sign a piece of paper. Yep.
Everybody's saying nice things about each other on this thing. Offsite, of course, we argue like cats and dogs, but you've got to be an accredited investor, and that has to be verified. Now, I understand, giving you a little plug, everybody, audience, I'm giving you a little plug. I understand you set up a website, and I understand one or two of the big projects are actually using that website where you can now go onto Jor's website. Hey, Jor, it's with your brother. I didn't even know you had a brother. How come I haven't met him? But can you be unabashedly self-promoting, and can you give the audience the website where you have your pay some money and get verified or whatever that thing is? What is that website?
Yeah, I can. And though it's self-serving, I will say that we've done a pretty honest assessment. And folks that know me know that I have no problem admitting that someone's better than me.
Everybody is better than you, but give it to us.
The website is called verifyinvestor.com.
Yes.
And it's basically a compliance tool for this general solicitation requirement that you actually verify your accredited investors. It's called verifyinvestor.com. It's being used right now by some very large projects in EB-5. One of China's largest agents that sources many investors for EB-5 each year. They're sending folks through the site now. And also NES Financial, which is probably the leading kind of fund administration and escrow solution provider in EB-5, is integrating the Verify Investor solution straight into their portal.
Jor, I do not get a commission for these plugs. I definitely should. So I want to see if there's a spike in signups, and I expect my commission check next time I see. If I don't get a commission check, you're going to have to at least buy me a drink. Let's move on to this next slide, which says, don't mess it up. Is that don't mess it up, Bernie, or just don't mess it up? What is all this no fallbacks to safe harbors, cannot rely on 4A2, 506B, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait, yeah. There's your thing. I honestly didn't check the slide. There is your investor.com thing. You have got the plug in there already, but now everybody's noticed it. Is this don't mess up? How do we mess up? We lose our exemptions?
Yeah, so here's the thing. In the past, if you did Reg D and you did a private placement and you messed up a little bit, maybe there was another exemption you could have used that was, that was also a private placement exemption. However, there is only one exemption available in the U.S. that allows you to, use it within the U.S. that allows you to do public solicitation. So if you're doing an offering and 2 days before you, actually go out to the offering, you accidentally generally solicit. You go to an event, for example, that is open to the public, and you go around the room with business cards, and you tell everyone, I've got this fantastic real estate project in New York. Could you invest in it? If you've done something like that, or anything else that could be construed as general solicitation, that's it. If you've now got to use Rule 506C, general solicitation exemption. You can't. There's nothing else you can really use. So you want to be very careful before you step into the world of general solicitation. Understand, even before you're making your offering, talk to your attorneys. Make sure that you understand the laws and how you should go about doing your offering. It could be as simple as creating a website that is publicly available and listing your project on it and the details of the securities.
Jor,
general solicitation.
You have appropriately scared me. You securities lawyers always terrify me. But after listening to Steve Cohen from the SEC at IIUSA, I am appropriately terrified. I do believe he's out to get us, and we better make sure we don't drive over the speed limit because they're coming to get you. Moving on to return of equity structures in EB-5. The big deal is debt or equity, with a huge preference for debt right now. The Chinese market wants debt. They want a loan. They want to know it's going to get repaid at some point. We know it can't be guaranteed, or equity. Explain to me the two different options and what the choices are and how this works, Jor.
Yeah, typically the equity model, the traditional equity model is where the investor invests into an entity, and that entity is also the same entity that creates a job. So your investment vehicle for EB-5 and your job creating vehicle, same entity. That's the traditional equity model. Now, the debt model was is a hybrid derivative of that, where the investors invest into an entity. So, the capital raising entity is entity like X or something, right? And then X then makes a loan to company Y, and company Y is the one that creates the jobs. So it's still an equity transaction in the beginning because investors get equity in the first company, but then that company then makes a loan to a separate company that creates a job. And now that's the loan model. When we first started off in EB-5, the equity model was fairly dominant. And in fact, I think one of American Green Fund's early deals in the planning phases, it was equity, and we had to try to educate the folks in China what equity was versus debt and things like that. And then, most deals since then have been debt. Lately, in the last year or so, we've been seeing a renewed interest in equity structures. To be honest, the interest has been there, and the actual projects haven't necessarily turned all equity just yet, but there's definitely a trend, and I do expect that we'll see a few more equity deals in the future.
Let me switch to you, George, if you are ready and available. What's your spin on the debt versus equity deal? What are you doing with regard to your current 2 or 3 projects you have in the pipeline? And most importantly, what are you seeing in the China market with regard to demand?
Sure, absolutely. I can say that based on what I see out in the marketplace, primarily out in China, that about 9 out of 10 projects are using kind of the debt model or some type of hybrid of the debt model. For investors, the debt model has some benefits to it, and investors, their primary goal is to earn a green card for themselves and to be able to get their money back. The debt model provides a bit more predictability in that you have fixed terms. You know when you're going in, you know when you're getting out, you know what your interest rate is or your annual return is going to be, and it's very fixed. And investors like that because they want to know and they want to be able to see, and for you to point to a place that says at 5 years or 6 years, whatever the term is, that they're going to be exited or divested from this investment. There is, as Jor alluded to, there is more equity models that are coming in. I don't see it taking over the marketplace quite yet. I think from a project perspective, equity models work well for projects in that it allows for more options and more flexibility for a project to use EB-5 in conjunction with other debt. The equity is more flexible, but I think that EB-5 investors, the challenge for them with it is that they want to know that they have that they're going to be exited, and they also are looking at where their safety is, and that will generally have lien rights to it, and investors feel safer if they're collateralized by some type of real estate, whereas equity is going to fall much lower in that capital stack.
Got it.
Work the equity as pref equity or as standard equity or pari passu equity to a developer's equity. I still gravitate toward debt projects, though, for us.
George, you hit the nail on the head there. I think that is a critical issue right now, and the sophistication of the market, at least in China, is quite significant. Debt's currently ruling over equity. Let's jump over to the last of Jor's slides, which is escrow. Escrow has been a big saver for a lot of people. Talk to me, George. Sorry, I'm stealing your slide here, Jor. Escrow. This is generally your standard procedure. We have early release escrows coming on the market, certainly 526. What's currently in play? What is the escrow requirements you have, for example, on some of your new projects? And how is this all working in practice, George?
First off, I'd say that escrow is not a requirement of USCIS or the EB-5 program. It's something that's developed over the last 4 or 5 years to provide kind of a safe harbor for investors, so that when they're making their investment, again, their number one goal is to ensure that they're going to get their green card, and that the funds will stay in escrow traditionally until their I-526 is approved and that they're on that critical path of getting their green card. Now, the challenge that with USCIS having longer and longer delays, where you're seeing projects being approved in, if we're lucky, 6, 7, 8 months, some taking 9 to 15 months, that it's really hard for a project to wait around until the funds can be released or waiting for an I-526 to be adjudicated. So projects are getting more creative, and the developers and regional centers are getting more creative with the different types of early release systems. And that there's critical paths that everybody wants to know that the project is going to be successful. What we design are early release mechanisms whereby sometimes it's going to be waiting for one I-526 to be approved, then we feel confident that the project is essentially approved from USCIS's point of view, and that all the other I-526s from the project side will be approved. And then we're also looking at other kind of backstops if the project needs the funds faster. And our current projects, we're using bridge financing as that backstop, whereby after a certain amount of time, if the I-526 is not approved, that funds can then go into the project. And that relieves the bridge financing, and obviously, shores up some capital for us that it's not going to be as expensive having that expensive bridge out there. But we have other mechanisms that if, say, at a later date, the project were denied, that we have that capital facility, that bridge financing facility, to come back and pull back and recapitalize the project if the project was to be denied by USCIS.
And of course now, one of the good things is bridge financing is now allowed, and if you can prove that the bridge financing or the bridge equity is temporary, then if you're paying off the bridge, even if there's no intention that the EB-5 money pay off the bridge, the jobs can still be counted. So that's the good news came out of the May 30th memo. Bridge financing is in. George, sorry to steal your slide, but I thought I'd give it to George since he's our guest today and you're part of our regular. That is the last of Jor's slides. Jor, if you have to run, thank you. I'm going to try and open this up to questions, but the truth is I have hundreds of slides to cover. So let's try and cover our material. There's Jor's bio: walks on water, flies without wings, JD, Columbia University, blah, 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 BA at Berkeley. I understand you used to party a lot when you were a kid doing your BA at Berkeley, but we'll pass on that. Jor, there he is, Jor at Homeier. Call his number, curse him, use his whatever. He does actually return his calls. So, American Dream Fund, I didn't get any slides from George. I didn't even get his picture, which is why I stole the one off the internet. But I took the shot of his website. It keeps changing. This is just his Las Vegas website. You don't even have a picture of the SLS project. I've actually toured it, and I tell you, I was blown away. I actually think this thing is going to, I'm not a Vegas person, but I think this project of yours is going to work. And, bravo to you, George, on pulling that mega project off. I know you've got regional centers all over the country, LA, Portland, blah, 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 whatever, and pretty amazing what you're doing. So this is the guy, Wright Johnson. Give him a little plug. Info at WrightJohnsonLLC.com. Call 954. Hello, I need an economic business plan. We call them BPs and EAs. When you're in the trade, hey, I do it like this. Kevin, I need a BP. I need an EA. Get it done fast. And you know what? Just time and delivery is pretty damn amazing. They have done a lot of projects, multi-state projects. You told me 77 days one of your, the Michigan Regional Center got approved. Kevin, let me ask you a question. Is it true that you have succeeded in obtaining multi-state regional center approvals? And if you plead guilty to this, how many states is the most you've managed to get approved on any of your BPs or economic analyses?
Yes, well, we have done that in the past. I think that the important thing to note about that is, although there is a lot that you'll read about multi-state regional centers, they don't often tend to be the entire states all combined. Although we have had that done in a couple of cases, you know, what a lot of times people will do is that, like for example, you might base your regional center out of Manhattan, but you'd use the New York CSA, which would also go into New Jersey and in Connecticut and the surrounding area. Same thing with other areas. I know we had a regional center done, CP Homes, in the Tennessee area that went into 3 or 4 states surrounding that area as well. But they didn't take up the entire state, just the portions of the states that made sense to them.
Well, that is really very helpful. We do know that the USCIS, and we heard this, by the way, at the IIUSA conference, we had none other than Colucci, the director of the program, actually appeared with us, and it was wonderful to meet him in person. He does, of course, have an enforcement background. So the one-line takeaway I asked one of my friends, so what do you think of this? This is a friend of mine who's been in banking, and he said, well, when you hire an enforcement guy to do a program, what do you get? And I looked at him, scratched my head, couldn't think of the answer. No, I got it. And the answer is, if you hire an enforcement guy, what do you get? You probably get something called enforcement. So the simple bottom line is that where we are right now is that USCIS has acknowledged that they have no criteria to limit geographic scope. USCIS has acknowledged that they do not have any criteria to limit geographic scope. And at the present time, you know, the largest one, I believe, is 5 states in the Midwest. That was through the AAO, the Administrative Appeals Office. So pretty major significance. And I know some of my speakers do not have access to our slides, so what we have up here is EB-5 marketing forces operating a regional center. I'm going far too slow, so I'm going to start speaking faster and faster and faster until I give all of you a headache. And here we have. I'm going to ask these questions of you, Mr. George Ekins. What are the 2 questions that every project developer must answer? Exit strategy, jobs, marketing success. George, comment on this question, if indeed it is a question.
Well, I think the way that I look at every project is really from an investor standpoint. And I think that's how the developer needs to look at it as well if they want to be successful as far as marketing or selling EB-5 in this space. And it's really, what's the investor's number 1 goal? And I speak about this over, you know, throughout the world, but mainly in China. Do a lot of seminars out there. The number 1 question I get from every investor is how can you ensure I'm going to be able to get my green card? How do I know I'm going to be able to get that? And not just at the 526 stage, the temporary green card, but the permanent green card. And the second question is, how can you ensure that I'm going to get my money back? I want it back. So when we're designing any type of project, we go into it with those 2 things in mind on how do we design it to ensure it and mitigate all the risks that are associated with getting the green card and returning funds.
You still there, George?
Yes, I'm here. You want me to expand on that?
No, I don't. I think that's a perfect answer. Actually, I want to move on to another issue, which is this next slide, IA-29 bubble caused by increase in 526 approvals from late 2012 to 2013. 2013 saw 3,700 526s approval. 2012, 3,000 526s approval. You know, that's almost 7,000 526s. And of course, the 829, the petition that we file, the application we file 2 years down the road after the conditional permanent residence, once that gets approved, they get the full green card, move on to citizenship 2.5 years later. So let's call the 829 the judgment application, judgment day. If this gets approved, wonderful. This gets denied, you get put into deportation, or you put in another 500,000. So here's an interesting little thing. In 2013, the denial rate was some 5%. I repeat, 5%. Yo, immigration does not want to deny too many 829s and put people into deportation. But a few years ago, denial rates were 20, 25%. Oh my gosh, 1 in 4 potentially being denied and put into deportation. That is a very pleasant trend and something I'm very happy about. So let's move on to the next slide, I-28 filing requirements. I guess that's Jackie Chan scratching his head. and the slides here is IA-29 filing requirements. We file a bunch of them. So let me turn to you, George, because you have to prepare all that documentation and send it to me so I can file the IA-29. What do we do? What are the essential elements, and how do you help me prove that you've met the requirements from job creation and sustained investment? What's your role in that, George? What do you do there?
Sure. As the issuer of the security and as the regional center, this is the critical component. In knowing your investors, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to pass this hurdle. The first step that you have to do is show and evidence to USCIS that the investment of each investor has been sustained throughout the 526 period through the 829. If there is any type of refund process through that, that will be a big problem when you're dealing with 829s. One of the ways that we generally evidence that is through K1s, but we also get letters from the development that we're making that investment in, evidencing and stating that each EB-5 investors' funds have been sustained and they're continue to be invested in it. You need to prove that the funds have been deployed to the project and that they've been used in accordance with the business plan. So if you're going to be constructing a hotel, you need to be able to evidence that your EB-5 investors' funds were directly invested into that project, construction was started, it was completed, and that it was used for the purposes that you stated within the business plan. And if it's not, then you're going to run into problems with USCIS. You need to also prove how the jobs are being created. And this is where you're going to run a new economic analysis. And depending on if you're using construction jobs or jobs from operations, and most projects use a combination of both, that you need to show that the necessary expenditures were made for construction, so you satisfy that number of jobs, and that operations have meet those critical thresholds to support the number of jobs that you said that were going to be needed, and that needed to satisfy each EB-5 investor. The other thing that we do within our projects is that we require that the developer have audited financials. There's reporting requirements to us on a quarterly basis that are unaudited, but on an annual basis require that they're audited. And this helps with the verification process and gets USCIS, our opinion, to become more comfortable that the information that we're providing them is truly accurate.
So I know you know how to read, but please continue with that. What other things do you do with regard to verification that helps us with our 829 submissions? You've already covered some of these points.
Sure. I think the other thing I would say is that if you have two different models here. You have a regional center model and you have the direct model. Most of the direct projects are quite a bit smaller, but it is a growing trend. In that direct model, you're going to have, you're not going to be able to rely on the economic analysis, but now you're going to be required to show W-2s and to evidence that the actual employees are there. I highly recommend the regional center model. It's a lot easier as far as showing that funds have been spent or that there's revenues or there's forecasted revenues, and that you have either created the necessary jobs or that you will create within a reasonable time frame the necessary jobs.
So talk to me about some of the operational challenges when managing a regional center, George.
I think the easiest way to describe this is brain damage. You know, you from when you first get involved in an EB-5 project, as far as designing it and designing something to ensure that it's going to be received well by EB-5 investors and the different consultants that you're going to be working with overseas, you need to make sure that, and it's helpful to be working with people that have experience in this, because what I've found, and I've consulted on a number of projects, is that you design a project that you think is going to be good from your perspective and maybe well perceived by the domestic market, but designing something for EB-5 investors is completely different, and you need to really work off of designing something that's going to mitigate those two primary concerns that I addressed earlier. You know, how do you ensure that they're going to get their green card, and how do you ensure they're going to be able to get their money back? So within that process, after you're out there marketing, you have to deal with the relationship aspect of all the different consultants that you're going to be working with, as well as with each individual investor. And investors are going to go through this process of, once they're interested in your project, then they need to go through the process of signing up for your project, then working on source of funds and path of funds of moving it outside of their home country and into your project, then working with Immigration and Counsel and getting their I-526 submitted, and then you have that waiting game. But then you ultimately get RFEs on each individual investor, and you have to work with them to cure those RFEs and get them approved. And then there's the tracking process. Each regional center does have a requirement of a 924A that they have to file on an annual basis. That also keeps up to date on where the investors are. As well as you're going to have to be filing K-1s for each individual investor. You're going to have to ensure that they're coming to the United States, that they're going through the consular interviews, that they're getting their green cards, they're not losing them, and that they're getting Social Security numbers so you can properly file K-1s. And you have this whole tracking process of each individual investor. Now, if you're dealing with a project that has 5, 10, 20 investors, it's something that you can do fairly easily with 1 or 2 people. But as soon as you start getting larger projects, you're going to need to build your group and build your team to ensure that there's you have the bandwidth to be able to handle all of the investor requests. So, and that's not counting the requests you get from investors once they land here, that they're going to want to tour the project, they're going to want to see what their investment's really going into, and be kept up to date on with quarterly or annual reports.
George, I know you do that, and your reporting and your people are constantly harassing me if I don't send the receipt for a filing within a few days, and your people want to come over here and inspect my work site and make sure that there's that we're not out having fun or partying. You know, even though I'm out of town, your people are pushing. They want to come. You've got a great team, and you're on us. But the big issue is proving to the agents, the people who are selling abroad in China, where 85% of the sales currently are, that you can pull the project. Give us a one-liner on that. You know, what are they doing? These agents, they know what's going on. I hear they're hiring U.S. MBAs. They're kicking the tires. They really want to do due diligence for their clients because, you know, they're the ones who have to face the clients if things go bad.
I think you almost answered the question right there, and that what I'm happy to see over the last 5 years that I've been in this business is that agents and consultants overseas are now taking a much more active approach in the due diligence. And this is really coming as a result of some unfortunate kind of pretenders in this industry that weren't able to pull this off. And agents and consultants and everybody involved in a project want to know that you're going to be able to pull this project all the way to the finish line. And if you don't have a track record, that's really hard to prove. And agents are getting much more strict in their due diligence. They're looking at conflicts of interest. If you're the regional center and you're also the developer, are there conflicts there? Who's going to be representing investors when there's a speed bump along the way? But I'm happy to say that the people that are representing the investors are now taking a much more active approach in doing due diligence, and they are hiring other third parties. As a project coordinator, developer, regional center, you better make sure that you're also hiring your own third parties and you're paying for it to ensure that the project you're bringing to the marketplace is a good project and it's going to be able to go across the line. Otherwise, once you go out there and you start marketing, they will beat you up. You'll come back with a couple of black eyes, a lot less money in your pocket, and won't have much to show for it.
I think people need to understand the sophistication of the market. You don't just go get in and there's a bunch of Chinese guys just wanting to throw money at you. These guys are smart. They've got experts. The agents have become very knowledgeable, and you may well find them. They know more than you about certain aspects of due diligence. Now, I am going to switch to some of the basics because I do understand that we have advanced people online. We also have beginners. So I'm going to fly through. I don't normally speak this fast, but I'm going to speak as fast as I possibly can because I want to get through a few of the next slides. We only have about 55 slides to go, and I know you guys are going to fall asleep. So let me fly through for the beginners very quickly. Just catch up on your emails, you experienced guys. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Just want to touch on what is the EB-5 program? Invest 500 or $1 million, depending on the geographical area, high unemployment or rural area, create 10-ton 10 full-time jobs, you get a winner, you get a conditional green card, and then you prove that the investment is sustained, the jobs are created, and bingo. There it is. Everybody asked me about EB-5. One slide, everything is there. Boy, that is the whole EB-5 program. What is a regional center? Look at the regs, promotes economic growth through increased export sales. But look at the last sentence, job creation, job creation, job creation. This is a job creation program. Regional center entity, George already explained, oversight to 526, subscription agreements, escrow, monitors direct employment, tracking infusion of capital, monitors compliance, blah, blah, blah. That's what George does for a living. Thank you very much, George. You do a good job of that. What else did they do? They applied to USCIS for designation and approval, market projects, help prepare the 526 and 829 packages. They do help with due diligence on the source of funds. That's the type of thing the regional center does. Allocates jobs between investors, makes sure that everybody gets their fair share, decides on new projects, prepares 829 packages, the final step, as well as the annual report, the 924A. Regional center versus direct. Most everybody is going with regional center. There's some demand for direct, so much more work to do. The big issue is regional center versus direct comes down to one issue. Direct EB-5 means direct jobs. Regional center means indirect. Nothing else you need to know. Indirect jobs is the reason why regional center allows you to go out and extrapolate the exact number of jobs, including indirect and arguably less active role in day-to-day policy formation and management for the regional center. Affiliated with, we already spoke about this, the center can, affiliated projects may count direct or full-time jobs as well as indirect. So regional center allows indirect, including some jobs which are estimated to have been created. Section 610 of the Act of 1993. It's not in the Immigration Act, but it is in Section 610 of the 1993 Act. There's the reg. So I have not forgotten you, Mr. Kevin Wright, explaining indirect jobs. Go into the weeds a little bit, if you would, Kevin Wright of Wright Johnson, and explain to me a little bit about indirect job creation and how does this actually work, the economic forecasting, the reasonable methodologies. Kevin?
Well, yes, you can. In a regional center context, you are able to count, as you said, the direct and the indirect jobs. So, quick definition of that. So if you had a restaurant, a direct job would be a waiter that worked in the restaurant. An indirect job would be anyone who's delivering things to the restaurant in the supply chain. And a subset of indirect jobs are induced jobs, which are when your waiter leaves the restaurant, takes his paycheck, and goes and buys groceries at the grocery store. You're helping to inducely employ people in that grocery store. Now, to count all of these indirect jobs and to calculate them, you use economic models, such as in-plan, RIMS2, or REDINE in the EB-5 context. And you will, basically what happens is the model calculates how many indirect jobs are created in two different areas, one being construction side of things and another being on the operating business. So if you know that you're going to spend $10 million on hard construction to build a hotel, then there's a multiplier that is associated with construction of hotels. And if that multiplier happened to be 15, for example, then 10 million or 10 times 15 would give you 150 total jobs.
So Kevin, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that the important things to understand when you're looking at these models are, the results of the model are only as good as the inputs to the model, and that's where feasibility studies come in. The fact that you really need to have a feasibility study and not take a developer's word for it. If they say it costs $10 million to build a hotel, well, they're in a position where fudging those numbers would help them to get higher job creation. So the USCIS really looks for third-party reporting to verify how much does it cost to build a hotel, and then on the operating side of whatever the project is, in this example, the hotel, you're basing the indirect job creation of the project based on how much revenue that hotel is expected to do. So you really need a third-party company to to basically verify that the occupancy rates and the revenue projections are correct.
Kevin, thanks for making that so crystal clear. So just to ask a question, SLS, Old Sahara Sands, huge project, 375 million raised. How many jobs did the economic reports project on that particular project, sir?
That project had more than 8,000 jobs associated with it.
Awesome, thank you. And that's how we managed to raise almost 400 million, obviously leaving a cushion in there. So we have, and the bigger the cushion, the better. Let's flip over. I know there's a lot of immigration lawyers here. What's our role? Advising developers on options, putting together a team of professionals, reviewing documents for immigration compliance, filing the application, filing the immigrant petitions, preparing and filing application for project pre-approval. So that's the job of the immigration lawyer. That's what I do for a living, keeping very busy with this stuff nowadays. And let's move on to how to create a regional center. The beginning of the beginning, how to create a regional center. We're going to run through this one as well. I know it's the topic of the day, but this is some of Kevin's slides. So evidence required for filing a 924. We request the designation. We have to cover the geographical areas and the industry sectors. This is the two key things that you have to decide. Job creation, we need a business plan, economic analysis, and of course the absolutely important TEA designation, very, very important. We have to describe promotional activities and budgets, transactional documents, and the organization structure that are some of the ingredients, but certainly the key ingredients for 924. In geographical area, we have to try and work out what the size of it, we have to try and justify this and select a region. Kevin, you deal with this on a daily basis. What do you do? How do you advise people when they say to you, well, I want to set up a regional center to cover the entire United States? What's your response?
That's not really a good idea. What you really want to do is base your regional center around the area that you know the best. So, if you were based in Southern California, good size for the regional center would be Southern California. If you want to try and add the entire state of California, that is possible to do, but it is going to be costly and going to require extensive economic analysis and multiple business plans to demonstrate its need and the economic benefits, throughout the entire state rather than a more focused area.
Got it. So talk to me about how commuting patterns versus MSA factor into this in terms of the size.
Sure. So when you're applying for a regional center, you need to apply based on sample projects. So those sample projects may be, for example, a hotel in Los Angeles. Now, a hotel in Los Angeles, the area that you would use to determine the economic benefits to the region would be, you could either do a commuting pattern analysis, which is to determine where is it that people who are working in Los Angeles will be commuting from. And in the case of Los Angeles, it's most likely Los Angeles and Orange County. So you'd get a two-county combination there. Another way to do it to get larger areas that people often use are metropolitan statistical areas or combined statistical areas. For example, the New York City combined statistical area is 22 counties. Thereby, you can do one sample project where you do one business plan and one economic analysis and pick up 22 counties. You can also pick up many more counties that way in the Los Angeles area, rather than only getting your 2 counties where it's based on the commuting patterns. But in most areas, MSAs and CSAs are not that large and not as easily available, and therefore commuting patterns is the way that it would be done.
So, Kevin, the name of the game, in my opinion, is BPs, business plans. Talk to me a little bit about business plans. What is a matter of how a business plan? Don't go into too much in the weeds, but help us through the slides, sir.
Sure. So, business plans are required, obviously, for projects as well as regional center applications because, again, to get a regional center approved, you have to base that application on a project, whether it's a real project or a hypothetical one. So all of those require specific things, such as matter of hoe. In the matter of hoe for a specific project, you need to demonstrate the the need for the project, the competitive set. You need to show the job creation, types of jobs that will be created, and a variety of other things that are set down. All you need to do is Google a matter of how, and you'll see a very specific list. The thing that the key to know about that is it's not your standard business plan. Although half of the business plan is like any other business plan, it talks about the business. The other half of the business plan is all about how the project fits into the EB-5 program. So you really need to, use somebody who specializes in immigration business plans for that.
I just can't reiterate that enough times, where every time I talk to a businessman, yeah, I got a business plan, yeah, I know how to do that, no problem. And I'm like, guys, please, just stop. Your business plan is not a immigration compliant business plan. The business plans that need to be done, as well as many of the security documents, are very focused towards EB-5. So I honestly will never accept a business plan other than from somebody who's seasoned and experienced. I'm obviously plugging Kevin here, but I know his firm has actually done hundreds of these, and we move them regularly. The good news is, on a direct project, the matter of how compliance can be somewhat a little bit simpler. On the regional center, of course, in a hypothetical, relatively simple, but when we get into the real thing, it gets a whole lot more detailed. So, Kevin, talk to me about the expenditure model versus the direct jobs model.
Sure. Again, we talked about how in the construction industry, you're basing all of the job creation on how much money you spend or you expend into the industry to create the project or to build it. So if you expend $10 million into the construction industry, there's an associated multiplier and a number of jobs that come with it. When it comes to the time for the operation side of the equation, you have a choice. And that choice is to base your operational job count on either direct jobs as an input to the model, in which case it will give you a total output of direct plus indirect jobs, or you can use the revenue of the project to generate the direct and indirect jobs for you throughout the model. So for example, in a restaurant, if you know you have 100 direct employees that are going to work in your restaurant and your multiplier is 1.25, then you know the total job creation for that restaurant in the operating side of it is 125. But instead, if you wanted to use revenue, which most people do, a revenue model would base total job creation based upon the amount of revenue that the restaurant plans on doing. So if it plans to do, say, $5 million in revenue and your multiplier is 20 jobs per $1 million in revenue, then you know that that restaurant is going to create a total of 100 jobs, assuming it hits that revenue mark.
So, Kevin, in addition to the BP and the EA, economic analysis and business plan, we also need an M&O plan, marketing and operational plan. This is, again, we're under the topic of setting up a regional center. Talk to me briefly about what's in your operation and marketing plan that we need to submit as part of our regional center application.
Sure. Basically here you need to demonstrate to the USCIS that you understand how EB-5 works and you understand how to raise money within the rules of EB-5, as well as how you'll be vetting your investors and their source of funds and so forth, and present a plan to them. It's not that USCIS ever really makes much of a determination of whether they like your plan or they think it's going to work. They just want to know that you have a plan, that you understand that every year you need to turn in an I-924A form to stay in compliance, that you understand what your target market is and how it works in that country. So if you plan on getting investors from China, you'd want to spend a lot of time talking about the fact that you're going to be working with licensed immigration agents because that's the laws of China, and you would want to make sure you demonstrate that you're going to stay within them. Second part of that is making sure that the USCIS is going to want the applicant to demonstrate that they have enough money to carry out this plan until the point where the regional center becomes self-sustaining and the business is moving forward. So if your plan for the first year of marketing and operating your regional center is, has a budget of $50,000, they're going to want you to line item that out, and they're going to want you to evidence that you have $50,000 dedicated to take care of this.
Including money in the bank. That used to be an absolute requirement. It seems that when we filed years ago, we had to show we had the money in the bank. Now they just want to see that you actually have the money available. Let's move on to organizational transactional. This is where I normally bring in Jor, but I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go a little fast. We put in our organizational documents, subscription agreement, escrow agreement, offering documents, and our marketing agreement. Those all need to be put. There's many other documents we can put as well. This critical question that I always get, do we rent a center or do we create a center? What are the issues in the economic impact analysis? What is the regional center boundary? Are we going for the whole state? We've already discussed this. We've discussed the MSA commuting patterns, multiple commuting patterns. From the May 30th memo, if you haven't read it, you've got to Google that term, May 30th, USCIS EB-5 policy memo. What industry sector requirements are you going off to? Is the project contiguous with the existing? So it's pretty clear that if your project is contiguous, let's suppose you have a regional center approval for LA County and your project is in a neighboring county such as Ventura County, that may be acceptable, and of course verifiable detail, the new name of the game. Okay, we are pretty much done with the first sector. I see we have about 10 minutes left. I have about 50 slides to cover, so I'm going to see if I can speak at 1,000 miles a minute. For those of you who haven't seen it, I mentioned earlier that I just had the privilege, that's me at least 25 years ago or 100 years ago, not quite sure, EB-5 retrogression. I, last Friday, had the privilege of doing this panel with Charlie Oppenheim, chief of the Immigrant Control and Reporting Panel. So I wanted to give you an update on Chinese EB-5 quota backlog. We can really summarize it in 2 or 3 points. The number one question is, when is the problem going to emerge? Are we going to have a problem in 2014, that is fiscal 2014, ending September 30th? And the answer is going 1, going 2, going 3. We have no problem. This is good news. We have no problem this year. If you're going for your green card interview in China and you're being scheduled for the month of September, make sure you score 100%, because if you are missing just one document, I repeat, just one document, and normally you can drop that off and get your green card, you will not get your green card in the month of September unless you score 100%, because you will not be able to reorder a number. When you apply for an immigrant visa abroad, a number is assigned to your interview. You go to the interview, you score, you pick up the prize, and you walk out. You're missing a document. You can't just bring it back next week because they're going to return your unused visa number or give it to somebody else. So make sure you're 100% for September. But it's no big problem because a new supply of visas is coming on the market October 1. And even if you don't have it, you can get rescheduled for the next month and pick up your green card. You have no problem for this year. I am formally declaring, of course, things can change and the State Department can, in fact, change this. But the simple bottom line is that we're going to be okay for this year. This is not a problem. There are 10,000 visas allocated a year. So when do we have a problem, Mr. Bernie Wolfsdorf? Well, here's when we have a problem. We definitely have a problem. Charlie Oppenheim gave out the $1 million information May 2013, 8/5/2013. When is this going to appear? In July 2015. July 2015. That is the summer of 2015. A number will appear. That number will be the wait line. That number will be the retrogression. That number will be the backlog. And that number will be May 2013. So what are we looking at? I can't do math. Let me take off my shoes. I've got to go beyond 10. 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I can count. The wait line will be, for a Chinese EB-5 investor, approximately 2 years. 2-year waiting line. So we're getting approvals on all our cases we filed in July and August last year. Our cases are taking about 10 months to get an approval. Some of them took 2 years. The longer that it took to process, the better it is. The more RFEs you get, the more gray hair you've got, the better it is for you because your case has been pending. Story is there's cases pending in the system from 2010. No, wait, hold your breath, 2009, 4 or 5 years. If those cases get approved, they don't have a problem because they are way ahead in the waiting line. okay? So regardless of how long the Chinese wait line is, will it affect any other countries? No, it won't affect any other countries. You know, I think I'm going to be a little bit rude on this one. Normally I take questions. I see I've got about 5 minutes to go. I don't want to keep any of you beyond 2 o'clock. That's just too much. So I probably won't do questions this time, but if we get questions, I'll do them. And, you know, we do this almost every month. If I knew the date of the next one, I'd let you know. But please share this with your friends. Make sure you register. These things are free. And for those of you who are lawyers, at least in California, I have applied for and already got CLE approval on some of our programs. It's still currently pending on this. You can actually get free CLE. Listening to Silly Me, Silly Bernie, you actually get free CLE. Not a bad deal. Share this with your friends. Learn about EB-5. So the bottom line is 2-year waiting line. Now, wait, I'm confused and I don't know how to do math. So what do I do about this? What kind of problem do I have? Bottom line, after I did my presentation in Washington with Mr. Charlie Oppenheim, a regional center came up to me and said something very profound. So Bernie, what you're telling me is an 18-year-old is not safe. I'm like, wow, he hit it. They got it. They understood it. I know a 20-year-old is not safe unless the case has been pending forever. I was saying before I did this presentation, a 19-year-old was safe. A 19-year-old is no longer safe if you are only filing the petition now. And what the regional center said that was so astute is, so Bernie, what you mean is you need to warn an 18-year-old. Everything is about disclosure. Our securities lawyer explained to us, you've got to disclose. You have an 18-year-old kid, that kid may age out. Yes, you get to deduct the time the petition was pending. If it's 4 years, great. You get to deduct 4 years from the kid's age at the time of the approval. But let's do some math here. If the kid was 20 at the time of filing, the petition took 1 year to be processed, and it's a 2-year backlog, you aged out because you have to lock in that child's age by moving to the next step, so-called seek to acquire. So when am I going to update that picture and put in a picture with my gray beard? I don't have a gray beard anymore. I shaved it off. Makes me look too old. Okay, so there's the EB-5 quota, 10,000 a year. We're going to fly through this. We've got 3 minutes and 50 slides. What is a quota backlog? Quota backlog is when you have a waiting line. What is a priority date? That's the date you file your 526. The date it's filed, you get your PD or your priority date. There, travel visa bulletin. You haven't had to worry about it. Visa bulletin is current. Go to travel.state.gov. Travel.state.gov. We'll be sending this all out to you so you can find it. There's the visa bulletin. Look at number 5, CCC, current. This is a June 2014 bulletin. What is second preference? Second preference is basically your master's degree category. Look at the poor Indians. They had to file in November 04, 10-year waiting line for second preference green card. Look at the poor Chinese. They have to wait 3 years. Wait, I can't do any math. Let's try one more time. 5 years for a second preference case. And what if they only have a bachelor's degree? Oh my God, this is depressing, okay? If you're Chinese and you have a master's degree and you see a 6-year wait, that is long. It is very depressing. And if you're from India, you're double depressed. So what do? You have to find another way, or you pray that Congress will do the right thing and fix these numbers. This is insane. Why are we driving away our smartest people? But what if a waiting line develops? If you look under China and you see that current, and you fast forward, you are now in the summer 2015. That C under China 5th preference is going to change, and it's going to read May 2013. And that is going to cause something called retrogression. Retrogression is not a psychological retrogression is not a psychological diagnosis that causes depression, but it has been known to cause depression. It has caused depression in Indian and Chinese nationals with master's degrees when they see that they have to wait so long for a green card. So retrogression is not to be equated with depression, but can be a cause of depression because it's absolutely ridiculous and we have to wait for Congress to fix it. I am running out of time. I got 50 slides to go. I got 50 seconds, 1 second a slide. Let's go. Bingo. What is this? Difference between visa category being unavailable that says no visa. They shut it down. We thought they were going to do that in September. They're not going to do it. There's the magic number, 5113. Is this guaranteed? Nothing that I say is guaranteed. Nothing that I say is legal advice. Do not rely on any of this. This is mere input, and it can change. Let me tell you, when I prepared with Charlie, the day before, he was giving me different numbers. He said August 2013, and then the day of the presentation, he flipped it, so I had to throw away my PowerPoint because the numbers weren't even accurate. He changes by the day because it all depends on demand, and there are so many variables. So, what if your exact priority date shows no good? It has to be prior to that date in that little column under China. It's only going to happen to China. It's not going to impact any of the other categories. Every month this thing changes, and every month they publish it around the beginning of the month. So that's how it works. So country of birth. So the joke that I made on this one is the Chinese guys, mainland Chinese guys, are all going to be trying to marry Hong Kong girls. That was so sexist. Chinese investors are all going to be marrying people from Hong Kong, Macau, or Taiwan, or anywhere else in the world, and then they can remove the problem because it works off country of birth. So buying a passport doesn't work. Marrying a girl from Taiwan does work. Marrying a husband from Taiwan does work. Sorry for being so sexist, just because I'm a guy and I'm trying hard, but I don't get it right. Okay, so how many EB-5 investors a year? So average between 3,500 and 4,000 petitions. You basic have usage for dependents. They calculate 66.5% for derivatives. So 2 derivatives for every principal when it's Chinese. What happens when it changes to other nationalities? That'll probably go up. Rich people probably don't have too many kids. When are the visas allocated? The visa is allocated when you go to the interview or when your adjustment is approved. So should your immigrant visa process or adjust? Always immigrant visa process. There were over 6,500. Why didn't we have this problem last year? Because there was a slowdown in adjudications. Slowdown in adjudications. The State Department predicted the problem. Didn't happen because of a slowdown in adjudications. That point I've already covered. Are we going to hit it this year? Current usage, about 1,200 a month. That's very, very high. 1,200. Even if people are unable to return, they can come back in October and pick it up. 85% usage for the whole country. Let's try that one more time. 85% of the world's petitions are Chinese. That's why we have a problem with Chinese backlog. This is a really important slide. Even when you have Chinese retrogression, please note Chinese backlog. They can still invest. They can still file the 526 petition. They can still get the approval, and they must still proceed, but they cannot proceed to the final stage, which is pick up the prize, pick up the green card. So that's the story. May 2013 is our cutoff. This will create a wait line of approximately 2 years. This is the slide. This is the only slide I had to show you, but I went and wasted 5 minutes of your time babbling about all sorts of other things, but I'm talking at 100 miles an hour, so hopefully we'll finish off really quickly, send you all back home, and you can continue with the rest of your life. So May 1, 2013, your petition had to be filed before that. There's the visa bulletin, travel.state.gov. That's your favorite State Department website. Will this affect the direct cases? Will there be a difference between regional center and direct EB-5? No. If you come from China, everybody will be affected. So if there's a backlog in the last quarter, we're not going to have it continue. I already explained that new supply comes on the market October 1. Is there any chance immigration will improve this? No. Immigration does not have the ability to do this. Only Congress can do it. Is there any chance Congress will complete it? Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you, but remember, the program also sunsets. Everybody believes, including me, that Congress will extend it, but we don't know for certain that Congress will extend the program. Will they give us more visa numbers? My personal belief is they cannot give visa numbers only to the rich guys, the EB-5, and not give them to the poor second preference, the smart guys, like my tech guy who's looking at me right now and smiling at me. He's got a master's degree, and I'm sure he's not happy that the waiting line is so long, back up to 5 years. But come October 1, there's a new supply. That line's going down. It's not going to be 5 or 6 years. Charlie's going to move it forward. It's only going to be 2 or 3 years. So there we are. Why should it be increased? 9,000 petition pendings. My math is no good, but that tells me there's 4 to 5 billion in EB-5 deal flows, 40,000 jobs a year, 3 or 400,000 jobs plus. Come on, guys. This is 10,000 visas. 10,000 visas a year, and you get $1 billion in the hopper and 100,000 plus jobs over a year or two. Come on, this is a good deal. It costs the taxpayer nothing, nada. Come on, Congress, get off there, vote this thing in, get off the partisan politics, and let's take another $4 or $5 billion into the U.S. economy, create another 100,000 jobs. Okay, so what do we have on this slide? We have the government slide. Okay, what do we see? Worldwide employment, I got this from Charlie Oppenheimer. Fiscal 2013, 8,654. Let's try one more time. 8,564 visas issued in fiscal 2013. That ended on September 30th, 2013. 8,500. We did not hit the cap, but look at the massive increase. That's more than double what we had. Double? What are we talking about? Fiscal 2010, 400% increase in the program from fiscal 2010 to fiscal 2013. Exponential growth. Look at that. 2010, under 2,000. 2011, 3,500. 2012, 7,500. Fiscal 2000, 8,500. And this year, we're going to hit the combined total of 10,500, approximately 10,500 issued. We're going over 500. There's not an exact quota of 10,000. There's all sorts of drop down, drop up. What are your top 5 countries in the world? There you go. China, pretty much everything is in China, 6,800. 6,900 from China. This is a China program, hence the backlog. Korea in second place with 364. Come on, that's piddling. That's 2 or 3%. Mexico in third place with 1%, 2%. China, Taiwan, Taiwan there at 137, 1%. Venezuela. This is going to change. You're going to see more Brazilians. What are the other countries that are still in there? There's Iran, Great Britain, India, I think, will come up. There'll be a whole bunch of other nationalities come up. So there's my unofficial predictions. I've already given them to you. 24 to 25 months waiting line. August 2015, July or August, 24 months waiting line. There's my predictions. We're going to finish. We're actually over time. What's the problem here? The Chinese quota backlog is going to create a problem for age out. Child Status Protection Act, CISPA. That's going to be our headache. Making sure that the kids can get their green cards, lock in their application by filing the DS-260 and paying the fee bill. There's a second stage. You do the calculation. You do the calculation at the time the petition is approved. You deduct the time the petition was pending from the kid's age, and then you file your DS-260, or if you, in the U.S. legally, you file an adjustment of status. You have to do this lock-in procedure. There's a possibility you can file an 824 to do a lock-in. So what's the story if Congress does not increase the quota? We definitely have some issues with regard to the backlog. And, what if Congress does not extend the regional center program? Well, forget about the indirect jobs that Kevin spoke to you so ably about. Sorry if I'm giving you a headache. We are sending out free Tylenol with this. Advil, free Tylenol, free Advil for listening to me talk. Don't believe everything I say. My jokes are completely ridiculous most of the time, but that's how it works. So over 9,000 cases in the system. Even 19-year-olds are not safe. The 19-year-old kids are not safe. The 18-year-olds need to be warned based on my math. I, of course, cannot do math, but Charlie Oppenheim does know how to do math. The Senate did pass a bill that gets rid of derivatives that would effectively increase the quota to almost 30,000, because if you get rid of the spouse and child that's factored in, you massively increase the number of cases that's available. But you'll see the word there, seek to acquire. You have to do the second stage, seek to acquire, to get a lock-in. And if you can't seek to acquire and do the lock-in, then the kid ages out. So there you are. That's the issue. I explained there that you freeze the age once you do the lock-in. So I do green cards for people who are 23, 24, because we're able to lock it in and they're backlogged, but they still get their green cards. So do we have any questions? Yes, we have questions. Folks, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit rude. We are, right now we're over 2 o'clock. I know that the average human being can't really last this long. So, normally we go into question mode. Tao is clicking on, oh my gosh, we've got a whole bunch of questions here. You know what, I'm not going to take any more questions, so don't submit any more questions, but we've got about 10, and I'm going to see if I can answer this. Are the slides supposed to be visible? Yeah, they were supposed to, but I didn't. Those are early ones. I was just babbling and babbling. A potential client has just had their 924 application approved, but in the approval decision, the section listing the industry codes and ACE codes that the RCE has been approved for does not include a determination regarding some of the industry categories. Yeah, you can amend. I'm not reading your whole question. It's too long, but you can amend it when you file your 526, so I don't need to worry about that too much. Can I-526 be filed first come, first served, or be filed together when all the investors? No, one at a time, one at a time. Any panelist complete project outside of TEA? Very hard to sell 1 million, sorry. What is the usual multiplier of direct jobs for indirect jobs? You're going to have to email me that. I'm sorry, that's a very complex question. What can a direct investment offering do to make themselves more attractive? Show that it's going to be a viable business would be the answer. How do you know if a regional center is at risk of decertification? Oh, good question. We don't really know, but I can tell you they're going to start decertifying inactive ones at some point. So, there's just far too many out there. 480, there'll be 5 investors per regional center to hit the quota. It just doesn't make sense. Is the 500K investment going up to 800K? I've heard a lot of chatter about whether it's going up. I have not seen any proposal, so I don't think that's going to happen. How can I get access to the slideshow? It's going to be online. All of the stuff is going to be online. You can listen to me babble if you want online with the slides. I was told that the clock stops ticking as soon as the investment is made and the I-526 is submitted. I don't know which clock stops ticking when you file a 526, but I don't like that advice at all. How do we print the slides? Keep on going. Thank you. You're funny. Thank you. I shouldn't mention your name. Somebody's just sent me an email at 10 past 2. Keep on going, Bernie. We are not average. We can stick it out. Smiley face. Well, thank you for that nice comment, but, here's where we're going. I kind of flew through all your questions. It's 10 past 2. We still have 200 people online, 196 precisely. I thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I thank particularly my team, George Ekins, Jor Law, Kevin Wright. Thank you for participating. We do have new guests every time. We do these almost on a monthly basis. You can sign up online, and the nice part about these things is they're free. We share the slides. We're going to probably just do hot topics, what's happening on the next one. I'm off to China next week. So thank you, everybody. I hope you learned one or two things. The truth is I learn every time I do these, and may you all have a wonderful day, wonderful summer, and thank you so much for joining me. Adios, amigos, amigo. My Spanish is terrible, but I love the language. Bye, everyone, and until next time.